Hello and welcome back, Counterpoint students. We've been through species 1, 2, and 3, been introduced to some basic concepts. You learned how to spot mistakes, and you tried your hand at the first time composing a counterpoint above and below a given cantus firmus. But wait, there's one more we need to cover, and that is, drumroll please, of course, species 4. Technically speaking, there is another species, species 5. Species 5 is a combination of different aspects from species 1 through 4, and that's something you will cover in another course should you continue to study music. And most undergraduates students will end up taking a theory sequence that includes species 1 through 5. So this isn't the last time you'll see it. Okay, but it is important to cover species 4 because it has one of the most important things that you see in all kinds of music, not just music of pre-Baroque or classical or romantic, but you hear elements of species 4 in today's music as well. Okay, and what are we talking about? Well, you can see it at the top of your page. Suspensions. Okay, perhaps you've heard of a sus chord, and maybe you've wondered, well, what does that stand for? And of course, you're thinking, oh, right, suspended or suspension. Well, that comes from this idea. Let's get into that a little bit. But perhaps you've heard of a sus 4 or a sus 2. Right? Let's figure out what that means if you haven't walked through that process yet. Okay, so if we took a look, let's look at 3 examples here, and even without reading, we could just look at the notes themselves. So if I just looked at the figures alone, we have a 6th, octave, 4th, 3rd. So at the most basic level, what am I looking at? Well, I see a dissonance here. I see a consonance here. At this point, I would ask the room, if we were sitting in the same room together, what other species does this look like? Does it resemble species 1, species 2, or species 3? Certainly one of them, you've seen something similar. And of course, you would all say, oh, right, this looks a lot like species 2, doesn't it? Because it's operating in half notes. And you would be right on. In species 4, you will mainly be working with half notes. Where is the exception? Well, just like we saw in species 2, at the end of your phrases, you will go back to species 1 often for the cadences. Okay, so that's good to know that it's operating a lot like species 2. Then why even cover it? Why is it something different? Well, let's look at these 3 examples. So we've identified consonance, dissonance. Okay, what about the second example? Oh, here we start with perfect consonants. And then we have dissonance here. Any perfect consonants? Yes, I see. And dissonance here. Okay. So if you were just to compare these 3, what do they all have in common, and how are they different? Well, take a look. We've already said that the rhythm is based in half notes, but what else about the rhythm is similar between all of them? Take a moment to look through all 3. At this point, you're saying, right, okay, so there is a tie, not to be confused with a slur, and that's being tied over the bar line. Okay, and that is in all of these examples here. Let's see if it will let me draw. Okay, there we go. Okay, so here we have a tie over the bar line. So you could think of this as strong beat, weak beat, which is tied to a strong beat, weak beat. Okay, all of these have that in common. Okay, what else do they have in common besides just the rhythm? Look at the type of dissonance versus consonance. Look through these 3. Okay, I think I'm seeing a pattern here. That in the second measure, each exercise has a dissonance on the downbeat. Okay, in the In the first, we have a 4 resolving to 3. In the second, we have a 7th resolving to a 6th. And in letter C, a 9th resolving to an octave. Ah, okay. Whoa, this is something brand new, isn't it? Think about the use of dissonance that we've seen in species 2 and species 3. How did we use species 2, dissonance? Are you remembering? In species 2, the dissonance is only to be placed on the weak beats. In species 3, dissonance is only on the weak beats. Same thing, although a different rhythm, of course. Species 4 is very different. A suspension involves dissonance on the downbeat. So this is an important aspect. So right here, I'm going to put big D for dissonance. All right. Okay. How do we approach that dissonance, and what happens after the dissonance? Try to look through all 3 examples. You could pause the video and play through them if you want. Okay, how are they approached, and what do you do to get out of that dissonance? Okay, so you've probably looked through those 3 and you're thinking, oh, right. So before that dissonance, I'm tying, of course, to the same note. So this has to be the same note, this note that precedes it. That's the case here in all of these. That of course you're tying the same notes. That is the definition of a tie. Okay, so that's fairly obvious. That tie, that initial note, has to be a consonance. Well, why is that? Well, the whole idea here is that you're going to set up a dissonance on the downbeat. So before it, you're going to have consonants. Let's look and see if that's true here. Yep, we have a perfect consonance. Oh, here we have a third. That's an imperfect consonance. That's fine. And here we have a third as well. So in all of these cases, the suspension is preceded by a consonance. Okay, this is good to know. And lastly, this is a really important guideline or rule. How do we get out of that dissonance? Go through and look at all 3 examples, and where does that upper voice go? Okay, in the first example, example A, we have a voice that descends. In example B, again, we have a voice that descends from the dissonance. In example C, again, we have a voice that descends. Not only does it descend, it descends by step. Okay, so this is stepwise motion moving downwards in all of these cases. My friends, these are the rules of a suspension. We just need to learn the names of them, but you, in essence, already know how to build a successful suspension. Okay, we know where the dissonance is. It's on the downbeat. So what comes before the downbeat? Well, this is called the preparation. P for preparation. Okay, and what comes on the upbeat? Well, that is the resolution. It's going to be resolved to a consonance. It's a very simple idea, isn't it? That you're going to have first consonants, then dissonance, then consonants. But it's a really specific way of going about it. We're very used to this idea. If you truly listen to any song on the radio, any song on Spotify, any piece of music you're currently practicing, it will have quite a bit of dissonance and consonance. How it uses that consonance and dissonance is another thing. So the music of J.S. Bach is actually very different than the music of Beethoven. Try listening for that use of consonance and dissonance. How often does it change? Is it very clear when it happens? Is it in multiple voices? Is it mainly within chords? We can use these same ideas in many different contexts. Okay, so this is a really important topic because you're going to see how we can apply this when we move on to our discussion of harmony. Okay, know this, that there are three parts of a suspension. So this would be a great test question. What are the three parts of a suspension? And you would say preparation, suspension, resolution. Preparation, suspension, resolution. And I would say, which are consonant and which are dissonant? And you would say, oh, the preparation is consonant, the suspension is dissonant, and the resolution is consonant again. Okay, when the cantus firmus is below and the counterpoint is above, you're going to primarily have these three figures. It will either be a 4-3 suspension. It's written right here, 4-3. A 7-6. Let's see, they don't write it down there, but we could write it ourselves. 4-3 suspension. You might take these notes. 7-6 suspension. Or a 9-8 suspension. Okay, these are this is sort of like your bread and butter. It's your everyday. Maybe that phrase doesn't hold up so well anymore. Maybe you're not having bread and butter every day, but whatever it is you're having every day. This is sort of, these are your everyday suspensions when the counterpoint is above the cantus firmus. Spend some time playing through them and you'll get them in your ears. Okay. What if you were to switch that? What if you were to have the cantus firmus above and the counterpoint below? Well, this is, of course, we've seen plenty of examples of that in species 1, 2, and 3. And of course, we're going to see something similar in species 4. Go through, look at all of your figures, make the proper markings. Do you see any perfect consonances? I don't see any in this first example here. I do see a dissonance though, which we'll mark with a triangle. And look at that, we do have a perfect consonance followed by a dissonance. Okay, and same idea here, where you're on the weak beat. This is the weak beat here. You're setting up the preparation. Preparation will be consonant. That's exactly what we have. On the downbeat, you're going to have dissonance. What is that called? The suspension. It is dissonant. And on the upbeat, the weak beat, you're going to have the resolution, which is consonant. Do the voices still move down by step? Yes, indeed. Take a look at both examples here. Moving down by step, moving down by step. Okay, so it's a similar idea, but what do you notice? That the figure is slightly different. We don't have a 4-3 or 7-6 or a 9-8, do we? Here we just have 2-3. And this really is your most popular suspension. This is your go-to suspension. There is such a thing as a 4-5 suspension and a 7-8 suspension, but those are slightly less common. Okay, so in terms of being introduced to species 4, pretty much this is as far as we'll go. Okay, so you might write this out for yourself on a little flashcard. Do write it out as opposed to taking a picture of it, because you will actually remember it better. Okay, and this basically covers what a suspension is, but let's see what happens when you put a series of suspensions together to try to make a melody. Well, you'd come up with something like this. Because of course the goal here is to create a smooth, flowing, beautiful melody. So let's go through. The first thing we'll do is identify our figures. We'll put circles for perfect consonances, triangles for dissonance. This is a good place to start. We have dissonance again. Where does that dissonance happen? Downbeat. Dissonance on the downbeat. This creates our suspension. Notice that this is counterpoint above the cantus firmus. So that means each of these moments of dissonance on the downbeat will resolve downwards by step. Downwards by step. Here we have the 4-3. What did I tell you? That it's the 3 most common. 4-3. 7-6, right? Again, resolving downwards by step, downwards by the step. Okay, this is great. What about this? This is interesting. This is something a little different, isn't it? This dissonance is not a suspension at all. In fact, this section here, these 2 measures, look a lot like what species? That's right, I can hear you all saying at the same time, species 2. In fact, this is a great thing about operating in species 4, is that if you get stuck or if you need a little bit of variety, you can do what's called breaking species. Breaking species equals going to species 2. All right, and why do we use this? Again, this is a good way to get out of a problem, or let's say to just create some more variety. Because what you'll find is once you start composing using species 4, it's a bit, it feels more like a formula that you're plugging in. And it's difficult to create a really beautiful line without sometimes jumping or changing the rhythm. So do keep this in mind, that it is possible for you to break species. Okay, how do you begin and how do you end? Well, just like we've seen in species 2, you can start either on the downbeat, or more often you'd be starting on the weak beat, starting with a tie. If you truly cannot do that, if you need another solution, well, you could break species right away. This would be preferable though. And just like we've seen before, when the counterpoint is above the cantus firmus, what are the 3 intervals you're allowed to start with? Well, of course, that's the unison, perfect fifth, or perfect octave. Okay, so when the counterpoint is above cantus firmus, we can use our usual 3 options on the weak beat here. Okay, what about how we end? Well, again, it is possible to break species and use, let's say, the leading tone in the second to last measure, but this is a very common way to end here, ending with the 7-6 suspension. In fact, I would write this out for yourself first and see if that will work for you. Sometimes you'll need to break species to make this happen. All right, but in any case, you do need scale degree 7, resolving to scale degree 1. This is re do. This is ti do, just as we've seen. Okay, and let's hear this exercise. Let's see if you think it works in terms of its overall shape. All right, the range is pretty small. So fa mi la fa mi re do ti la re do ti do, within a sixth, or actually within an octave. In this case, the low A to the A above here. Not overly large, which is good. Do we have a peak? Well, yeah, we do have this A. It happens quite quickly, and then it comes down, and eventually goes down the mountain, right? So this has a strange peak, and you will notice that in species 4, it is more difficult to make a beautiful mountain peak that goes to the very top and comes back down. It is possible to kind of leap up and then come back down. It is difficult to work your way up slowly and then come back down. So it is It is more typical of species 4. Besides that, let's try to see how many suspensions we have. Here we had a 4-3, that's 1, 7-6, that's 2, 4-3, 4-3, 7-6, 7-6. We had 6 different suspensions. We broke species once, and here this is not quite a suspension, although we do use the same rhythm, but we would not call this a suspension because what's missing? Well, on the downbeat is a consonance. So the great thing about this, if you have a consonance on the downbeat, it is possible to have a consonant skip. Notice that you're skipping from an octave to a sixth here. So again, this is nice because it gives you a sense of variety. It's not all a series of suspensions from beginning to end. Okay, great. All right, and if you need to pause the video here, make sure you play through this. Make sure you sing through both voices. Try to hear the dissonance between the two voices before moving on. Okay, so now we've established what are the 3 parts of the suspension: preparation, suspension, resolution. Where are they consonant? Where are they dissonant? We know this. What are the common suspensions above or below the cantus firmus? Above the cantus firmus is 4-3, 7-6, and 9-8. Below the cantus firmus, we're mainly talking about 2-3. And there are some other aspects here. You can break species. To start the exercise, you'll mainly be starting on the weak beat. To end the exercise, it's common to end with 7-6. However, it is possible also to break the species. So, in other words, to go to species 2. And lastly, it is possible to have a consonant skip using the same rhythm. Okay, there you have it. And there's one other aspect which is important, and that is something called a chain of suspensions. Chain of suspensions. Okay, what is a chain? Well, it almost is self-explanatory. In order to best describe this, you can often think of this as a series of imperfect consonances, parallel consonances. So, for instance, parallel thirds or parallel sixths. Now, this would be too many parallel thirds and parallel sixths if we were to be writing a first species counterpoint exercise. However, in this species 4, we can use this amount to develop a chain of 3 suspensions in a row. So let's see how that works. If the bottom is our cantus firmus, of course, these are going to stay as whole notes. If the upper part is the counterpoint, we're going to shift that over by a half note. So this downbeat becomes the weak beat here. Here's the downbeat. Here's the weak beat. What have we done? We took the same notes and we're shifting over the counterpoint by a half note. It sounds so much more beautiful, so much more expressive. Suddenly we're making an artistic statement when really we're doing something quite simple, which is just parallel thirds. And again, how does this work? But well, by the lower voice descending, this creates a suspension or dissonance between the top voice and the bottom voice. I'll do that again slowly. Dissonance, resolution, dissonance, resolution. And what you notice is, in a sense, one voice is chasing the other voice. They're going in the same direction, but offset by a half note. Okay, this is what's called a chain. All right, you can do the same thing using parallel sixths, which again, I'll remind the viewer at home, what is the inversion of a third? Well, it's a sixth. So it should work in a similar way, but let's double check. So if we start with 6, remember we like parallel sixths. Normally in species 1, we would see a total of 3 in a row. Here we see 4 in a row. And why is that? Well, it creates a chain of 3 suspensions in a row. So this is why it's all right. All right, so again, we take the same notes and we're offsetting the top voice because this is going to be our counterpoint. We're offsetting that by a half note. So again, consonance, dissonance, consonance, dissonance, consonance, dissonance, consonant. And here, this leads us to a cadence. So this is a common figure, especially if you have this downwards motion in the cantus firmus. This is a great way to end. You can consider using a chain of suspensions. And what does that create? Well, 7/6, 7/6, 7/6. Again, it's like the top voice is chasing the bottom voice, or you could call it a chain. They're interconnected. Okay, but wait, does this work if you were to reverse that? If you had the cantus firmus above and the counterpoint below? Well, yes, of course, we can have a chain. Again, we're taking thirds. So again, this top example here, and we're scooting that bottom voice this time over by a half note. And what do you find? Well, this creates a chain of 2/3 suspension. Okay, consonant, dissonant, dissonance, consonance, dissonant, consonance, resolution. Okay, in fact, this is quite common, especially because you're more limited. Again, you tend to have a lot of these 2/3 suspensions in the bottom when the counterpoint is below. Again, this book doesn't get into it, but it is possible to have a 4/5 suspension. Notice that those numbers are going up. 4/5, 7/6, 2/3. These are getting larger. And that's because we're of the nature of inverting the intervals. All right. Okay, and there you have it. In fact, I'll point out one other aspect, and that is if you took a 2/3 suspension and you inverted both numbers, what would you get? Well, the inversion of a second is a seventh. The inversion of a third is a sixth. This is what we have here when the counterpoint is above. This is what you have here when the counterpoint is below. Again, these are all examples of a chain of suspensions. Okay, it sounds simple. It's one thing to say it, it's one thing to write it, and it's another thing to try it yourself. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is, well, you know what we do first. First, you're going to go in and write in all the figures. So here they've started with, oh, right, that's C and C, that's a unison. Let's just start this first measure together, and then I'll have you do the rest at home. Okay, so again, this might look a little odd because just the rhythm is new for you. So if you're having trouble, you could write these all out in half notes for yourself, just to kind of remind yourself, oh, right, this is a D, and it's continuing. Okay, so this interval then is a second D to C. And remember, it doesn't matter if you start with the bottom voice or top voice, the distance is the same. This is a 2, and this is the distance between D and B is a third, right? And the thing you should be asking yourself, is the voice resolving down by step? Is this a suspension? Is there a preparation? Is there the suspension and a resolution? It looks like everything is in its right place. Here we have the preparation. Here we have the suspension, or you could also say dissonance if you wanted to, and resolution. All right, looks like this one checks out. So I think we're going to mark a check mark. Nothing's wrong here. I'm going to erase this work because this was just to remind me of the rhythm, that this whole note is lasting throughout the whole measure. Okay, but what if you find something? What if you find a mistake? Okay, in order to find all the mistakes here, you have to know one more thing, and that is that you're still on the lookout for parallel intervals. You don't want parallel intervals. How will they look in this species? Well, you're not going to be finding them on the downbeat. You're going to be finding them on the weak beat. So let's see if they give you an example here. Oh, here they're just talking about leaps, which is, leaps are fine. So here you tend to have more leaps. Okay, they don't give you an example of parallel intervals, but rest assured, you do want to avoid them in this species. Okay, so do your best. We'll talk about, if you find a mistake, mark it with an X. All right. If you have any questions, feel free to email me anytime. This is a fairly easy assignment. I know we're more than halfway through the semester. Keep up the good work. Keep on turning in your work. I'm asking for something small here, so you can catch up if you're a little bit behind. Next, I'll be asking you to compose a fourth species, and then we'll have a test on all 4 species so far. So make sure you're understanding, how is this species different than species 2? Get that straight in your mind. What's the difference between species 2 and species 4? That would be really important for you to differentiate. All right, thanks everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Stay healthy, and again, feel free to reach out at any time. Take care.